Sometimes you are sitting across from someone you love, and everything is fine. The coffee is warm, the light is soft, nothing is wrong. And yet something tightens in you quietly. A small, familiar fear that if they knew you more completely, they would want you less. Most of us recognize that feeling. We soften it. We reason our way past it. We pour more coffee and let the moment carry on. But some people cannot let it go. Some people pull on that thread until everything unravels. Was one of those people. He was a philosopher in 19th century Copenhagen, a Christian, a writer of extraordinary depth and tenderness. He spent more of his life thinking about love than almost any other subject. What it asks of us, what it costs, what it means to give yourself to another person without holding anything back. And then, when he was 27 years old, a young woman named agreed to marry him. He broke off the engagement 10 months later. He spent the remaining 14 years of his life writing, in one form or another, about why he had to. That is the strangeness we are sitting with. A man who understood love more deeply than almost anyone who ever lived, and who destroyed the one love he was ever offered, and who never fully stopped. Copenhagen, 1838. A young man sits at his father's deathbed. He is 25 years old. He is watching the person he loves most in the world die, and he is not only grieving, he is afraid. His father, Michael, had once stood on a frozen hillside as a boy, hungry, cold, furious with God, and he had cursed God out loud. He had shaken his fist at the sky and said what should not be said. He lived to be an old man. He became wealthy. He had children. And then he watched most of those children die before him, one by one. And the old man came to believe with complete, terrible sincerity that he was cursed, that God had heard him on that hillside, that his blood was marked, that everyone he loved would suffer for the simple crime of loving him back. Inherited that belief the way you inherit a face. He did not choose it. It was simply already there, inside him, waiting.
Since my earliest childhood, a barb of sorrow has lodged in my heart. As long as it stays, I am ironic. If it is pulled out, I shall die.
He wrote that in his journal, not for publication, for himself. A barb, not a wound that heals, something lodged, something structural. Now hold that image. Hold it while I tell you what happened next. Her name was, she was 17, he was 27, and she loved him not cautiously, not from a distance, completely. She said yes when he asked. She wore his ring. She told her family. And for a moment, a real moment, not a philosophical one, and was happy. Then the fear came back. Not suspicion, not anxiety, something he experienced as evidence. He thought of his father. He thought of the brothers and sisters in the ground. He thought about what it meant to carry the darkness he was certain lived inside him. And he thought, what happens to her if she stays? He broke the engagement. He staged it, in fact. He behaved so coldly, so deliberately badly that she would have something to be angry about. He gave her a clean exit and made himself the villain so she could leave without looking back. He thought he was protecting her. He thought it was the loving thing to do. Now stop there, because here is where it gets complicated. You might think, yes, obviously. If you believe loving you causes harm, you step back. That is kindness. That is self-sacrifice. The answer seems clear, but did not want to be protected. She wept. She begged. She said she did not care about the darkness, about the risk, about any of it. She was standing right there, fully informed, asking to stay, and he still said no. So the question shifts. It is no longer about whether you protect someone from harm. It is about something harder. Who gets to decide what is harmful? Who gets to decide when someone's love is more than they should be allowed to give? He chose for her. He overruled her. And he spent the next 15 years writing obsessively about the nature of love. Not because he had solved it, because he knew, in a way that never stopped bleeding, exactly what it had cost him to choose. Think of someone you love who carries something difficult, not a flaw exactly, more like a pattern, a way of being that costs them and quietly costs you too. Maybe they drink a little too much when the world gets heavy. Maybe they push people away right when they need them most. You know this about them. You love them anyway, but here is the question. Have you ever held something back from them? Not out of cruelty, out of care. Have you ever thought, if I give them everything, if I am fully here, fully open, fully committed, it might hurt them more than it helps? You told yourself it was wisdom, and maybe it was, but somewhere underneath that was there also fear. Fear of what full love would cost you. Fear of what you might do to them if they really had all of you. How do you know the difference? Wisdom and fear can wear exactly the same face. Knew that feeling. He knew it better than almost any person who ever tried to write it down. He had looked at love, really looked at it, and he understood what it asked for. It asked for the whole self, not the presentable self, not the self you have arranged for company, the actual self, the frightened, God-haunted, grief-soaked self that lives underneath. And he believed with a certainty that never left him that his actual self was not safe to give. There was something in him, he called it a barb of sorrow, that had been there since childhood. Something that made him who he was. Something he could not remove without ceasing to exist.
Since my earliest childhood, a barb of sorrow has lodged in my heart. As long as it stays, I am ironic. If it is pulled out, I shall die.
He is not being dramatic, he means it precisely. The wound and the gift were the same thing. The darkness was the source. And the young woman who loved him, who would have married him, who offered him the ordinary happiness he had never known, she would have had to live next to that. He decided she should not. He broke the engagement. He was cruel enough about it deliberately, so she would not spend her life wondering if she had failed him. He made her believe he was not worth keeping. And then he walked away. He spent the rest of his life writing. Some of it was about her. All of it, in some way, was about what love requires and what he had refused to pay. Here is the tension he never resolved. He believed that withholding himself was an act of love, that giving himself fully broken and dark as he was would have poisoned her life. But he also knew that love, real love, does not protect the other person from you. It offers you, all of you. And by that measure, what he did was not love at all. It was fear arranged to look like sacrifice. He knew both things at once. He held both. He never let either one win.
It belongs to the imperfection of everything human that man can only attain his desire by passing through its opposite.
To reach love, you pass through its opposite. He wrote that. He believed that. And perhaps he also believed he was stuck somewhere in the middle of that passage, passing through the opposite, never arriving. The man who understood love more clearly than almost anyone. The man who could not give it, or would not. He was never entirely sure which. And that uncertainty, that open, unresolved, quietly devastating uncertainty, is exactly where he stayed. Think of someone you love, not an idea of them, the actual person. Now try to remember the last time you truly saw them, not glanced at them, not half listened while your mind was somewhere else. I mean the last time you set everything down and let their reality land on you fully. When was that? This week? Last month? Longer? Most of us, if we are honest, cannot find it quickly. And that is worth sitting with. Thought about this constantly, not as an abstract puzzle, as a wound. He had watched himself fail at exactly this. He knew what it cost, and he came to believe that most of what we call love is not love at all. It is something more comfortable. We orbit the people closest to us. We check on them, worry about them, feel warmly toward them, but we do not always see them. There is a difference, and the difference, he thought, is everything. So go back to that moment, the one you are trying to locate. What was in the way? Maybe you were tired. Maybe your own anxieties were loud that day. Maybe you were performing interest rather than feeling it. We all know that performance. You nod, you ask the right question, but some part of you is already somewhere else. Now ask yourself something harder. Was that obstacle a feeling or a choice? Were you unable to see them? Or did you simply not choose to? Most of us want to say it was a feeling, because if it was a feeling, we could not help it. Tiredness is real, distraction is real. We cannot always summon presence the way you summon a cab. That answer feels honest. And it is partly true, but would not let it rest there. He would say, yes, and yes, the feeling was real, and the choice was still available. Those two things can both be true. The question is which one you are responsible for. This is where his understanding of love becomes something different from a feeling at all. He saw love as a task, a daily practice of will, not warmth, though warmth is good, not desire, though desire is natural, but something more like attention, deliberate, repeated, renewable attention to another person as someone who is genuinely other. Not a mirror of you, not an extension of your needs, someone whose inner life you must keep choosing to take seriously.
It will be easy for us once we receive the ball of yarn from Ariadne, love, and then go through all the mazes of the labyrinth, life, and kill the monster. But how many are there who plunge into life, the labyrinth, without taking that precaution?
The thread he means is not romance. It is not the feeling of being in love. It is this practice of seeing. It is what keeps you oriented toward another person even when the feeling dims. Without it, he thought, you are not in a relationship. You are just two people sharing proximity, each lost in their own maze. And here is where the tension that ran through his whole life pulls. He understood this more clearly than almost anyone. He wrote it down. He lived inside the idea. And he broke the one love he was given, convinced, in some deep and anguished part of himself, that his own darkness would eventually poison her, that the thread in his hands was already frayed, that to truly see was to know she deserved someone who could give without cost. Whether he was right about that, he never stopped asking. Here is the hardest thing you can say about, and it deserves to be said plainly. He broke off his engagement to, he gave reasons. Beautiful, agonized, philosophically intricate reasons. He said he was protecting her. He said he was too dark, too interior, too consumed by God to be a husband. He said real love sometimes looks like withdrawal. And then he spent the rest of his life writing some of the most profound pages ever written about what love demands of a person. So the question has to be asked, was any of that true? Or was it just a very intelligent man building a cathedral out of his own fear? Think about a time you protected someone from a choice that was rightfully theirs. Maybe you didn't tell them the full truth. Maybe you decided for them. You told yourself it was for their good. You believed that, or you mostly believed it. Now sit with it a moment longer, because here is the uncomfortable thing. You also didn't have to watch them choose poorly. You didn't have to carry that. The protection kept them safe, yes, but it also kept you safe from their reaction, from being truly known, from the terrifying exposure of letting someone see exactly what they were agreeing to. How much of it was for them? How much was for you? You don't have to answer out loud. That is the objection. Decided for, he decided she could not bear what he carried. He never asked her. She was 20 years old and she wanted to marry him, and he told her no on her behalf. The critic says, that is not love. That is control dressed in the language of sacrifice. And the critic is not wrong. There is something in this that does not sit still. But here is where it gets harder, because knew this. He turned the same instrument on himself. He was not naive about self-deception. He wrote about it with terrifying precision. He knew that the most dangerous lies are the ones that feel like nobility. He knew that a man can build an altar to his own wound and call it faith. He was not unaware that his reasoning could be exactly what it looked like. A beautiful rationalization for a man who could not open himself to another person.
It belongs to the imperfection of everything human that man can only attain his desire by passing through its opposite.
He was writing about himself. He knew the shape of it. To love fully, he believed, you must pass through the place where love undoes you. He had arrived at that place, and he had turned back. He knew he had turned back. That is not a man without self-knowledge. That is a man who saw exactly what he was doing and could not stop doing it, which is a different kind of tragedy, not blindness, something worse. Clarity without the power to change. And so the two things stand next to each other and refuse to cancel out. His theory of love is genuine. It cost him something real to develop it. His life is also a failure to live it. Both are true at the same time. The philosophy is not proven false by his choices, but it is not proven true by them either. What remains is the question itself, the one he could never answer in his own life. If you believe your inner world is too damaged to give without doing harm, do you protect the other person by leaving? Or do you let them decide what risk they are willing to carry? Chose for. He never stopped wondering if that was love or if it was the last place he was still hiding. Think of someone in your life right now, not a stranger, someone close. A partner, a parent, a friend you have known for years, someone you love or say you do. Now ask yourself honestly, are you fully present with them? Not kind, not dutiful, present. Because there is a difference, and somewhere inside you, you already know which one you are giving. Most of us are not fully present, and most of us have a reason, a story we carry. Maybe they hurt you once and you have never quite closed the wound. Maybe you are afraid of what they need from you. Maybe you tell yourself you are protecting them or protecting yourself. The story is different for everyone, but there is always a story. Name yours now quietly to yourself. Had a story too. He told himself deserved better. He told himself his darkness would infect her. He told himself this was noble. And perhaps it was. That is the impossible thing. He was not wrong exactly. His mind was a storm. His faith was violent and consuming. He genuinely believed that to love her fully would be to harm her. So he let her go. And then he wrote about love for the rest of his life. Now take your story, the one you just named, and do something difficult with it. Imagine it is simply gone. No reason, no justification, just you standing in front of that person with nothing between you and them. No old hurt to hide behind. No noble purpose. No careful distance dressed up as wisdom. Just you and them and the space you have been keeping. What do you feel? Sit with that for a moment. Do not rush to the answer that makes you look good. Because here is what understood, and here is where it cuts. He believed that love, real love, is not a feeling you manage from a safe distance. It is an act of total exposure. You do not love someone and also keep yourself protected. The two cannot live together. One of them has to go.
To stand on one leg and prove God's existence is a very different thing from going on one's knees and thanking him.
He meant that knowing something and surrendering to it are not the same. You can understand love completely and still never do it. You can have every reason to open yourself to someone and still choose the posture of the philosopher, standing on one leg, keeping your balance, staying upright. Analysis instead of kneeling. Distance instead of presence. That is the question he leaves you with. Not whether you love the people in your life. You probably do in your way. But whether the story you are telling yourself, the one that keeps a little space between you and them, is the truth, or whether it is the thing you chose instead of nailing. Never resolved this for himself. He died at 42. He never married. He never went back to. He was buried in Copenhagen, and she outlived him by nearly 50 years. He understood love more clearly than almost anyone who ever wrote about it. And he spent his whole life at exactly one step's distance from the only person who ever truly offered it to him. So the question is not whether his darkness was real. It was. The question is whether his story about that darkness became the thing that saved him from having to find out what he was truly capable of. Whether protection and fear, worn long enough, begin to feel identical. Whether the most loving thing he ever did was also the most afraid thing he ever did. And whether you would know the difference if it were you. You are still standing in front of that person. Without your story, what do you do? There is no clean ending to a life like his. Died at 42. He collapsed in the street and was carried to a hospital, and he refused to get up from the bed. He told a friend he was dying of longing. No one is entirely sure what he meant. Married someone else. She had a good life. When she was very old, a reporter asked her about. She said she had understood him. She said she had always understood him. We don't know if that was true or if it was the story she had decided to tell. He gave us thousands of pages about love, about what it demands, about how it asks you to empty yourself completely and hand yourself over without knowing what will be done with you. He knew all of it. And he looked at this real woman, waiting, willing, and he decided that what he carried inside him was too jagged, too strange, too close to something he couldn't name. He decided the kindest thing he could do was disappear from her life before he wrecked it. Maybe he was right. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe there is no answer to that, only the years between the decision and the grave. Here is what stays with me, though. He didn't leave because he didn't love her. He left because he did. And he spent the rest of his life not quite believing that was the right distinction to make. You might know something about that. Not the same story. Your own story. The place where loving someone and being afraid of what you do to them start to feel like the same feeling. He never resolved it. Neither probably will you. But you are still here, in the middle of your life. And that is not nothing.